Welcome to Security Weekly Virtual Hacker Summer Camp. I'm Paul Asadornian here with Dan DeCloss, the president and CEO of PlexTrac. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yes, nice to have you here and talk about purple teaming, which is always a fun topic. But of course, It means different things to different people, right? And when I talk to my pen tester friends, they talk about how every organization may do it slightly differently. So what is a purple team and what are the most important components in your opinion, Dan?
Yeah, so I would say, starting with the traditional sense that most, penetration testers have been doing for a long time, is that really technical assessment that is a collaborative assessment where you're sitting down across with the blue team or in a remote environment where you're being able to collaborate with the blue team and say like, hey, we're testing these things. Can you pick it up? Can you identify it? And it's a very valuable and important exercise to have in an organization. And so that's probably the more traditional sense. But as things progress naturally, people will do different things. And so really, if you were to kind of abstract that away from the deep dive technical penetration testing, purple team is really anybody that's coming together from both a red and a blue aspect. So red being anything kind of proactive where you're trying to identify gaps in the security of the policies or controls of the organization. And then having the blue team really be able to collaborate alongside you with like, yeah, we were able to detect that, or okay, we weren't. So we're going to assign this as a ticket to whomever we need to go and resolve that problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a regular pen test is more, the way I think of it is like a functional or regression test, kind of like a hands-off QA assessment, right, of your network security posture, right? Like you're just going to hand it over to the red team. They're going to do their thing and create a report. And that's important as, relating it to software, right, is as a functional test or a unit test or QA test, right? Where the purple team is more of a collaborative exercise that is really testing processes, procedures, and your defensive techniques, as well as your team, right, and ability to collaborate. Did I capture that kind of?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think, in some respects, it's a more in-depth tabletop exercise, right? And we always encourage those as you mature in your security program. And even early on, you can conduct these types of assessments even internally. There's plenty of opportunities and platforms out there to actually collect the tests. And in fact, PlexTrac is releasing a runbooks module this month to be able to conduct these exercises internally or in tandem with your external penetration testing team. But it's really important to be able to do this continuous assessment early on and being able to say like, here's what we're going to test, maybe take it in small chunks, right, execute it, be able to collaborate back and forth. And also from the blue team's perspective, be able to say like, hey, if this were to happen, what's our escalation procedure? Who do we contact? When do we get PR involved? When do we get legal involved? These are all important questions that you have to train your team and all the stakeholders throughout the communication channel, because it becomes so vital as you do prepare for a potential breach or any kind of incident.
And we run into this when we test our own software, right? Is someone will find a problem, right? Whether it's a security vulnerability or misconfiguration during a purple team, or whether user finds a bug in software, and I do this I'm guilty of this all the time. I'm like, I just want to just dig in and fix it, right? And that's bad for a lot of reasons, right? And I know it's bad, and I still do it, but it's bad for a lot of reasons, right? You want to make sure you follow your change control process. You want to make sure you're documenting that this was an actual vulnerability, that here is the fix, and then this is where I'm going to implement the fix, and that gets tracked. And it's wonderful to have a platform like PlexTrac to track all of that. And I highly encourage folks go out and get that product specifically for purple teaming so you can keep track of things, right? Because things may come back around, right? You want to have this tracking mechanism, not have it be in a spreadsheet or email, but have it be in software so you can track that through the life cycle of, when we did this purple team exercise, we identified this thing, we fixed it, we pushed that fix, right? And be able to track that progress so if it gets backed out or whatever, you can track it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also be able to identify whether or not that particular finding has been identified in your environment before.
Yep.
And so now you have metrics on, hey, this is how many times it got reported. This is how long it actually took to get fixed. And so now your security director or your CISO or even your board have more metrics and analytics on the trends of, are you making progress? How quickly are things getting resolved? And are you sticking to those procedures? Or where are the gaps that we need to really improve from a procedure perspective to get get those trends, like, the mitigation timelines down, so that as things get reported, they get resolved in an efficient manner, but also, don't break, other things in the process.
And now, do you have links or integrations rather with the attack simulation tools as well?
We have an integration with Scythe, so you can upload your Scythe information straight into PlexTrac, and those get recorded as activities that you can then go and add evidence to or make comments on, or if they're not a finding, remove them from the report. And then with our runbooks module that's coming out this month, you can have all of that data stored within the actual engagement before the report is created. So what's nice about the runbooks module is that you can execute these activities and these campaigns and start to identify which activities were successful or not. And then you have additional metrics on, here are the things that we're doing well, and here's the things that we actually need to improve. And those are the items that get reported as risks.
And so the runbook, explain what the runbook is, I guess, and how,
Sure.
Is a runbook used by the testers or the blue team, or is it collaboration?
It can be both, right? So the nice thing is that, we get a lot of requests for being able to, execute a methodology for a specific engagement. And even like from a consulting firm or just an internal red team's perspective, you may have like certain execution steps that you want everybody to conduct during the engagement. Like, here's how we're going to test for SQL injection, and did you do these things? Or, here's how we're going to test for privilege escalation, and did you do these things? So that's one use case for the run books. But we also are tying them into the Atomic Red Team and MITRE ATT&CK, so that you can conduct simulations based on APTs. So similar to what you would see from other Purple Team diving into MITRE. And what's nice about it is it does have this collaboration component, to where not only can the red team go in and perform these execution steps, and it's all documented, and they can provide the evidence and the timestamps and everything like that, but then the blue team can also see that in tandem and be able to say, like, yeah, we were able to detect this. Here's the the Splunk logs, or the IDS logs, or the firewall logs, whatever, and be able to show, like, here's the evidence for us actually detecting this. And then you can determine with the red team whether or not that actually needs to be included as a finding in the final report, or just, hey, this activity was executed and unsuccessful.
Now, are the runbooks also like a template, right? So I create a runbook, I associate it with an engagement, and then after the engagement, I'm like, I want to go back and add a couple of things. You go back and update the template and then associate with a new engagement?
Exactly. You can either update the original one, or you can create a new one based off of that one.
Yep.
So like, say you have like this baseline of things you always want to include, but then from here on out, hey, for these types of assessments, we're also going to add XYZ. You can keep that original one and create a new one based off of it.
That's great. It sounds like that's stuff I used to keep in spreadsheets and documents, right? Right. And now we have it in a centralized repository, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I also love the integration with Scythe, because I love to automate things, right? And people get this kind of warped perception of automation, right? Like, I'm not saying automate everything with an AI bot and we all get to live on an island in Fiji. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if in that Purple Team exercise, you have a finding, and you want to retest always that one, to speak to your continuous assessment, right? I always want to test this XYZ attack path, right? You can customize a module in Scythe and add it in, and then it gets fed into PlexTrac, right? And we can all work off of that same thing, because we know things change, right? I push out a fix for something that fixes that particular attack path, but an update breaks that change gets backed out, that spins up a new system, and it has that particular flaw, right? There's all these different things that we actually talked about in vulnerability management that we have to manage, because things are not static. And that's why I love attack simulation coupled with your tool to have that continuous assessment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the early on in the cybersecurity days, at least when I got into security, a lot of things were focused on that reactive, continuous monitoring, starting to get to that state of like, how do we detect all of these things, in a continuous fashion? And so as the industry has matured and grown, not only now are we, in this continuous monitoring capability, but now we need to be in this continuous assessment capability. And that's really what we're trying to facilitate across the board. And then, partnering with groups like Scythe to be able to say, like, here, you can do this in a continuous fashion. penetration. And maybe it's just testing small things to start with, but that's how you grow and show your maturity as you continue to progress. And I think it's really an important aspect for anybody starting a cybersecurity program, or if you're well along the way and have a mature program, being able to show that we're testing things in a continuous fashion. I think it's important because being a pen tester, I hated coming back a year later doing the same exact assessment and basically writing the same report.
Right.
And not being able to show that you've made, and even collaborate with the teams on making this progress.
And that's one thing your platform does really well, is allow for that collaboration and tracking, right? I love to see long gone the days are pen tester comes in for a week, generates this massive report, hands it off to the team. Maybe they do some stuff, maybe they don't. Then you come back a year later and it's essentially the same thing. That we need to get away from that in a big way. Yeah. And PlexTrac really enables that kind of constant assessment and looking at all of your exposures and tracking them. So.
Yeah, and it's important that as organizations grow, they bring this capability in-house and utilize the external teams for those annual assessments or those periodic assessments with the third-party eyes. Mm-hmm. But you need this capability in-house, and we're always going to have a talent shortage for that. So being able to utilize platforms like ourselves, like PlexTrac, to be able to help assist in that capability is important. And then utilizing something like Scythe, where you can actually say hey, here we may not have a team full of pen testers, but we've got a couple really talented people that know what they're doing and then can utilize these other tools to augment that capability. And then you really show the progress that you're making from a continuous perspective year round. Then augment that with your external penetration tests or your external audits. And now you have a fantastic way to show your data through PlexTrac to anybody that's asking for it, whether that's a breach insurance provider, your board, anybody that's, a third-party risk manager, anybody that's kind of asking questions about how frequently do you test your systems? How do you frequently do you test your controls? You have all that information right here within PlexTrac.
Yeah, and it's interesting, if I was the customer, right, I'd have my pen test team use PlexTrac, deliver the reports, and then even cherry pick ones and say, hey, can you either show me how to configure Scythe or customize Scythe to repeat that attack, build it into PlexTrac, so we can continually test this one thing, right? And I would pick, some of the top things that came back in my pen test report. I'd engage with my pen test team to say, the external one, right? Hey, help me configure this, right? That's providing a lot of value, I think, to the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. The more we talk about automation, and the more you can eliminate the routine exercises, like copying and pasting out of documents. I mean, that wastes a lot of time. Yep. And if you can eliminate that, then you can really focus on getting the real security work done. And that's really where PlexTrac thrives.
Absolutely. Fantastic, Dan. Folks can learn more and get a free trial at securityweekly.com/PlexTrac. Thanks so much, Dan.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Great to see you.
Stay tuned for more interviews on the Virtual Hacker Summer Camp coming up next.